Buonasera. Io voglio ringraziare il Politecnico di Bari per questa invitazione. È una grande gioia essere qui. Però vado a fare la mia comunicazione in inglese. Scusate. I'm going to present some of my students' work related with some topics we've been thinking about on the relationship between archaeology and architecture and landscape. And maybe the first thing I would start with is this idea about archaeological sites. What happens when fences of an archaeological site is removed, is taken away? Fences that we know preserve the spatial segregation of these sites. So this means that after removing the fences, difficult management of archaeological areas is installed, thought of as places of preservation against changes in context and against new uses of the area. So there is a kind of difficult relationship that can be a starting point for rethinking archaeological areas, maintaining as a fundamental condition not only the preservation of archaeological sites, but also their sustainability. So removing the fences means that we can start a dialogue between context and archaeological site. I would like to stress this idea about incorporating uses in the areas in archaeological areas, and thus thinking through this action, search for social, cultural, and economic sustainability of archaeological sites. So the presentation that I'm going to make now seeks to investigate or design the articulation with three different uses of certain archaeological sites that are also subject to climate change and terrible action of destruction that manifests itself over them. This is the south of Portugal, and precisely these three sites are located in this southwest coast. One point is close to Peninsula, it's Peninsula Detroit, it's in the northern part of this coast. Second point is located in Ilha south of Sines. And third point is Ribata Rifana, it's close to the Algarve, and to this special point that is such. All these areas are subjected to under a huge pressure of ocean waves, tempests, and so on. So they are under the pressure of climate change, and this has strong impact on their preservation. We can see here the three examples or three images of these sites. First one to the left side is Troia. And as you see, the water level arrives to a point, and the waves, the small waving that appears in the water surface destroys systematically this side. The upper right side is ribat rifan. It's a Middle Age. It's a 12th century construction. It's a ribat, means a convent, military convent. It is located in a cliff, a very important point. And third one, the right down image is the Pesqueiro Islet. It's an islet that is located close to Sines, and as you can see in this point, the water, the ocean, just goes over this area and drops over the archaeological site described it. So we can think about problems of preservation as technical problems. But what I would like to say is that this is not about solving a technical problem of archaeological preservation, thought independently of the values of territorial structuring, articulation with context, and improvement of the visit and the experience of the place. But on the contrary, to think how to resolve a practical problem of preservation in a way that can pave the way for the revitalization and compatibility of contemporary uses of archaeological areas, allowing forms of appropriation by the community and thus a shared preservation of these sites. So the first point, it's I'm going to show in Troia. It's how it's the problem of preservation, both from the problem of water level raising, but also a problem about popular uses of this area. This is the Troia Peninsula, so you can see it here. This is the Sad River. It's a very important wide area. It's a and this is a kind of sand dune that was occupied in Roman times with fish can industries. So first thing to understand this site or this point of the territory and of the archaeological meaning is to map the area. And when we think about fish can preparations for fish elements that allow to make the food spicy in Rome, we need to think that for doing this kind of activity, there should be at least 3 other activities in the area. One is to produce the amphora from which you can put the materials, the pastry. The other thing is salt for preserving. And the third thing is fishing. So here precisely we have some remains that allows us to think that the activity, industrial activity of this small peninsula had specific relationships with this context, not only with the port where fishermen would go out and take fish, but also from the oven for making the vessels and the flashes where things were taken, and also the salt that was produced precisely in these areas in the interior of the peninsula. So this is one of those examples of Roman ovens. Another example, an old photograph of salt flats that is to be taken. This salt activities were already Roman. There are other things of this area that still remain. For instance, this kind of palaphytic piers for fishermen. This kind of very traditional construction system is still nowadays kept as maybe it could be in Roman times. And after mapping these activities and this heritage, we have to think also about how things work. And in this map, we can see the process of construction, geomorphology of this area. This means that lighter brown means older parts of the area, and the darker ones means younger. For instance, this light brown here means that this point of this peninsula has less than 1,100 years. Another point that is shown here is how the water works, because in fact, you can see that it's a river. The river allows to make cultivation of rice fields. So this is sweet water that's coming from these sides. On the opposite side, the salty water that comes from the ocean goes around and curiously gets around this point and makes deposit here, making the soft flats we saw before. The comprehension of an archaeological site is always something wider, is related with the context. So that's a point that's very important for us. One point that is deeply related to this is the fact that there is a small chapel dedicated to the Lady of the Rosary that is located precisely in the archaeological site. And fishermen of this area, they make festivities in mid-August precisely to this chapel. They take Our Lady of Rosary, they bring it back to Setúbal, and next day they go around, it's a kind of, and then after that they bring it back to the chapel. This means that this is the archaeological site, as you can see. You can see also the chapel. You can see boats of the fishermen before, after having this fest. And these are other points of the archaeological site in the summer years. So one problem has to do with probable water raising. The archaeological site, it's precisely industries related with the fishing activities, fishing fish. It's in fact it's called garum. It's a fish prepared that is conserved in South Korea. The industries have a huge regularity, as you see here. There are cetarians, these tanks where they were kept. Here we have some examples of division, which was taken later after the first constructions, maybe 200 or 300 years later. They were subdivided and so on, but it's maybe the biggest industry of this kind in the Roman world that is archaeologically preserved. And besides this problem of articulating the religious views with preservation of the archaeological site, there is also some problems related with the shelters that were built, which are in really bad conditions. So we started studying precisely the modules, the process, the modulations, the repetitions, and there is a very clear pattern which allows to think that there was a kind of plan, a bigger plan for this industrial area, and this point that is very important also for the project in terms of measures and understanding the urban structure of this area. So, one main point. So besides the problem of resolving the shelter of a basilica, because in fact there is a basilica. You can see it here. There is the basilica here. In the upper part is the chapel. The basilica was built over the former industries. In fact, there are some of the stadia that were later used as buried places. And the overlapping of basilica also brings big problems in the process of conservation. But maybe the biggest problem is precisely how to articulate the functioning of these festivities of Our Lady with the chapel, because there's a kind of the former access that used to be done directly to the door was taken away for archaeological excavations, and the access that was made was a kind of side access that gives some problems. So there are maybe two main questions that this project resolves or tries to resolve. One is related with access and to the chapel, and also to improve the quality of the shelter of the basilica. And the other one is how to create conditions for the festivities taking place. This is the interior of the basilica. So besides giving a wider structure to the context, that means where to make access, how to make the entrance, and things like that. The project reinforces this point as a point of reception that would allow pilgrims and the festivities to overnight, because there is this tradition of overnighting in the area. Also bringing a space for having outdoor activities, and then finally bringing a space for the boats to stand and allow Our Lady to go in this walk around. So this is one point. The other point is precisely how to make the access to the upper part of the chapel, just getting around the archaeological site. This ground plan allows to understand more clearly the nature of the buildings that are proposed, and also the conservation structure that will bring shelter to the basilica and allows to go on. All these structures, the path that climbs up and the shelter are made of wood, just taking as a reminder these polyphytic wood structures that we saw before. So this is the pavement of this area that has no ruins, no archaeological remains. Is a much more strong pavement, and the other pavements are made of lighter material. This section through the area, it's quite difficult to organize because the plane of the basilica it's quite strange because it looks like there was some pillars here, but instead of being organized in this way, the basilica was organized as a set of sequence of spaces in perpendicular to the direction to the main altar of the basilica. It was located in this point. So a bit this region also in Arabic, there are some pilgrimage points to specific spots that are very important from the landscape point of view. And in a way, these shelters for pilgrims, for participants in the festivities, can also be used for archaeologists when they are working in archaeological campaigns. So could be just a common. It's just a common facility for whatever users. We can see now here the overall facades of both facades. The west facade, it is located to the inner caldera or water, in the north facade, and just a 3D image showing a bit the nature of the structure that is proposed. Second example, it is also has the same kind of problems, the first one, but with a different, with some more, with other kind of problems, because it's closer to Algarve, so it's much more under a huge pressure, touristic pressure. The location, the place that we are talking about here it's precisely, this image is quite strange, sorry. So it is, we call it Ponta da Atalaia. Ponta da Atalaia means a point for observing something in distance. So it's, in general, it's a high point over the landscape. And at this point, it's precisely a point in the coast in which you can see to the south side more than 100 kilometers with north side both. So you can see maybe 200 kilometers of the coast, which is a very important point. The area is also, this point as it goes, it's a kind of isthmus that goes over the ocean. It's very highly appreciated by fishermen because they can fish directly from the rocks in the ocean. So it has this strong use. However, in this image, it's precisely the rescuing of a fisherman that fell down in the cliff. So it's a dangerous place. When we think about, and this place also has, it's a very special place because, in fact, it was archaeological findings were discovered that there were some kind of constructions there, and these constructions, in fact, were studied by Rosa Varela Gomes and Mário Varela Gomes, two archaeologists from Lisbon. They found that these archaeological findings from the 12th century were a special kind of convent, monastery convent of Islamic Sufi wise men that made this community. One of these first analysis of this area was precisely to understand clearly the topography, how the water ran, and also the presence of these strange plottings, the division of parcels for vacation houses construction, and also the agricultural activities. These are some the drawings of the archaeological site. We can see these small cells that constitute the kind of mosque for each one of them. So we have this isthmus, this part, this piece of land that goes over the ocean. And these are remains. They are quite low. They have 30 or 40 centimeters. They are 30 or 40 centimeters high. And we are here looking north, so looking to the huge bay that extends to the north. This is an image from, this is the same site, but seen from above. The excavations have shown that, in fact, this is one of these meetup points, and in the entrance or this part here, there were discovered also some bodies, skulls, bones, etc. So this means that we're burying spaces here. There was a wall that was buried inside and outside this wall. So, in fact, studying in detail, we have archaeologists suggest that there were different kinds of spaces in this area. One main space that was in direct contact with the exterior, in which people could have access to these places, to these mosques. There was a kind of second one here, much more in turn, which they interpreted as the madrasa, so space for studying, and then kind of very special point in the end of the area, which was the maybe location of the main this Sufi wise man that promoted all this construction. It's in time, and close to his own cell there was a kind of a minaret or a tower to observe, and the wall that could have some kind of continuity. So one point about how to preserve these and how to make these are some interpretations designed by National Geographic magazine. They published an article about this, and this would be the interior. The interpretation of this site is quite difficult, and there is one example in Spain, in Guadalmar, which also is a ribat. You can see that the kind of constructions, the kind of cells are the same kind. They have space for sleeping and living, and the mihrab just for praying. Curiously, in this case, there was an interpretation that there were three kinds of spaces that articulated on the area. One first is kind of so spaces are coming from the more collective spaces to more private spaces. There's a kind of space of reception or entrance. There's a kind of space of control, and there is a kind of reserved final space. So it means that there was different relationships between this community and the outside world. The same kind of interpretation, Rosa Varela Gomes and Manuel Araújo proposed for this site, meaning that there was a space of entrance, a much more collective space, a space of control, and the space reserved, most particularly the space of the Sufi wise men. So the main purposes of the programs about this area are, there is one problem is to mitigate the presence of the housing complexes that are so uninteresting and give a strange scale and meaning to the area. So this is to create a kind of buffer zone to the housing plots and to the housing, to make access and visit paths that allow people to go in a very, to go across the area and visit the area and know the area. There should be, of course, areas of reception and hosting and interpretation and protection of the archaeological ruins. So the structure proposes, the design proposes one point of entrance that makes a kind of path, the continuity of the path, just to remind that we are entering a special area. Then going, this area is in fact dune area, and the dune vegetation is very difficult to preserve. So paths should be clear. There should be also, and there was another element that is a kind of shrubs. It's a very moist area where maybe it could be, according to the archaeologists, could be a vegetable garden for allowing the fooding of the monks that used to live here. So the project just proposes this point of entrance as a point of pause and also of access to a higher level, just to have a clear overview over the area. And to reinvert this Islamic garden as something that supports the community, and making clear that there is a kind of, through an alignment of cypresses, cupresses could reinforce the point of the cemetery as an exterior element before the entrance, and then going through an access to this special point, and finally to the end point. At the same time, the project proposes to create accesses to the special points for fishing, directly articulated is existing with these pavements that are proposed. So this would be the reception. One of the other problems at the archaeological area is that the accumulation of the earth that was taken outside when the digging of the archaeological digging was taking place was accumulated in specific lines. And the accumulation of this earth with very small stones just made some topographic alterations to the area. In general, it's a problem that archaeological areas have, this kind of archaeological areas, because maybe when archaeologists start working, they don't know precisely where to put the earth that is removed. And finally, it changes a bit the topography. The classic example is, of course, Pompeii, with this huge, small hill that completely cuts the connection between the Pompeii site and the sea and the ocean, and which makes us difficult to understand what means Porta Marina, because we see Porta Marina and then we see a hill in front and we don't see any sea. So it's a kind of, so here also happens this. So how to incorporate this kind of materials that are coming? And one possibility is precisely to work to incorporate them in this building that is made of rammed earth, and also with materials from the site that are not used anymore for archaeology. So this would be a bit view over the site where we can see to the right side the gardens and the cliffs, and the alignment of cupresses that sign precisely the this cemetery part of the point. So with the garden, there is a kind of gestion of water and some studies about how to make a garden this close to the sea. It's very difficult, so it should be highly protected from sea wind because it's difficult to maintain a vegetable garden in those conditions. One last point is the process of renaturalization of the area because it's infested by infested species. So a study about how to cut specifically these species, not in one time, but in several processes, just cleaning up the ecological area from these infesting species and also bringing back the original vegetation of the area. One last point: how to design the paths that connect to the for the fishermen in the area. And there is this very interesting project by Ponies in Sardinia that cuts stone in the stones, where it makes acid through the cliff to specific areas. That's a bit what is proposed here. One last project. It's a very small islet. It's not an island. In fact, it's the islet of Pesqueiro, so it's a very, very small islet. And how to preserve this site, because it is permanently damaged by the sea waves that go over the archaeological remains, and also how to preserve from human actions. I mean, tourists that go to the site and walk through and in a way voluntarily or involuntarily destroy the site. This first chart shows the archaeological points of the area. So Pesqueiro is located in this point here. This is where my arrow is. There's the Ilha de Pesqueiro. This is Porto Covo. This is Sines. It's a port. It's a very important port. And so you see, there are lots of things in the coast. This is the islet. The islet, you can see here, has three main points: a fort, a 16th century fort, a Roman ruin, and a quarry. A quarry in the 16th century, when they started, Portuguese, the king decided to make this harbor here. They started to cut stones of this islet and to make to put stones in the ocean just to close the relationship of the islet with the coast. Then they decided not to do this, and so the quarry was kept as something that is it's so to say landmark of the geology of the site. So this is the plan. In this general, this is a LIDAR survey. So through LIDAR we can get with detail the surfaces, and in this point you can see the camping point here. That is, it's quite strange thing. And here this light. In this light, you can see curiously how both sides of this light have different limits, because this one is much more aggressed by the waves in the climate and the ocean, and this side is much more protected. So it's through reading this we can understand how things work here. There are some historic, in these historic drawings, 19th century survey, you can see always already the presence of rocks that are, in a way under a great pressure of the ocean. and curiously in this part, there's a kind of protection that the islet is doing over the coast. You can see more the sand. So the fort and the islet also has some correspondences in interior, the beach and the fort. So there was a kind of second fort, and that's why when this fort was built, that fort was not, it was kept unfinished, and finally they quit the idea of fortifying this area because it was quite difficult. Because in fact the islet made a kind of shadow for the protection, because someone could hide himself here in the back of the island. So it was really a difficult point for protecting. These are the drawings of the fort that was in the and the image. So this is the first point, northern point of the islet, where the quarry takes place. You can see that we can see the cuts of the stones. They are facing this, so there's a kind of paving, and there is these cuts. There is the Roman ruins, which are also again stylish for these fish products like garum. And also these Roman ruins, they have a balnea, and this is the balnea. You can see the hypocaustum of the balnea, and the upper fort, a small fort that was, it's not quite clear if it was unfinished or if it was destroyed after being finished. Anyway, it used to be a very, very small structure. There are some drawings of this structure as well. In this image, you can see precisely the difference between what happened in the area in December 2015 and 2020. You see all these buildings here, all these archaeological remains here were completely destroyed. So this means that what happens is that the waves go against this rock, go up, and they fell down over the ruin, over the archaeological ruins, and get destroyed. So one point that is important in this area is how to structure the access, and we made studies about giving specific access to points in order to avoid continuous roads over the seaside. So the programs for this islet is just to give the new access to the area, to the islet, the small pier, pathways to visit site, protection of archaeological ruins, consolidation of the fort. But the main problem of these ruins is how to make a way to prevent the seawater and the waves to go over. This means what is called in terms of hydrogeological work, adherent work, something that is in a way connected with structure and prevents the ocean to damage the coast and damage the archaeological ruin. The project nowadays, in fact, the access to the island, to this islet is made this point, but this is the point where the current of water is it's stronger. And the proposal sees that making access to this point here, should be a kind of platform of access that could be a kind of open square as an opening space to the entrance, which would prepare visitors to see the site. So there is a kind of very small pier here, highly protected from the west, to allow people to arrive to this point. From this point on, then there is this very narrow corridors or spaces that allow to go up inside the platform. Through this way, it constitutes a kind of small labyrinth. And when you go up, you see everything else. But going through this point is an experience, a very interesting experience of going through a quarry. Then there is a path that goes directly to the south side, where you can see the adherent work of protection, and that has a back part that also would allow to have water. Then going through the archaeological site and ending in the upper fort, where some public activities can take place, like cultural activities, like having a small palestra about what you have seen, or some other cultural activities. So this is a bit the project. We can see here, this is the main entrance, the upper point. This is the adherent work that protects the ocean go through the archaeological site. This is the section. So this is the first point. And there is also a possibility of having a kind of excavated space that you go through and then go up to the platform. This is the pier. This design was made with the support of a famous hydraulic engineer of the Faculty of Engineering of Porto, Veloso, Professor Veloso, and he was all these structures were designed and supervised by him as well. So the second point is precisely the adherent work. The idea is to make something that is made of stone, huge stones. These stones, they are 1 by 1 2 meters long. They have more or less 1 ton. They are really heavy, and the heaviness of these stones is very important for preserving them in the site. So it makes a pavement. You can go behind the structure, or you can go also around the structure and see how it works. Then in some specific spots, the adherent work also has a kind of back water plane that makes a kind of natural swimming pool that could be used for. And finally, the small fort with the project. This is the original project and the existing ruin. In order to allow this public use that has just a pavement is made. There is reconstruction here of a space just for having a very small toilet, and the wall is remade with rammed earth in a way that it can be removed later. In a way that Pedro just has shown in his work. So this is a bit reconstruction of the structure in spite of being made of a more softer and different material, just to show the differentiation between what existed before and what is proposed here. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Grazie Paolo per questo tuo contributo importante, avremo modo di discutere le questioni che hai posto anche attraverso i tuoi progetti. Io procederei con il prossimo relatore, e vorrei quindi a chiudere.